Welcome and thanks for joining us for another episode of Code Girls on Air, a podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. On this episode, we interviewed Alexandra Houseworth, who is a lab assistant and electrical engineering and materials science student at Montana State University. She is also a former student here at Code Girls United. So join Alexandra and me to hear more of her story. Welcome, Alexandra. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show, too. Do you think you could start by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So my name is Alexandra Houseworth, and I grew up in Kalispell, Montana. I went to Glacier High School, and while I was growing up, I was actually part of Code Girls back when it very first started in Kalispell. So it's really cool for me to be back on this podcast to get to see how much the organization has grown. And right now, I'm in my third year of electrical engineering at Montana State University.
Wow, that's awesome. It's nice to have you back, too. I remember, I think we overlapped a little bit. You were older than me, so we weren't ever
Yeah.
very much, but... So could you tell us about your college experience and then your most recent internship in Japan too?
Sure. So my college experience has been really, really cool. I started out in electrical engineering, not super sure exactly like what I wanted to do with my major or even like why I picked it necessarily. But what I did know was that I really wanted to explore all the opportunities and things that were related to it. So I just sort of started poking around when I first got to college and got involved with a bunch of different laboratories at MSU. And so the first one I got involved in, we were studying like different types of pollen and like bees. And then I've now working in a microfabrication laboratory. So that's where we're building chips and photovoltaic cells, basically anything related to the semiconductor industry. We do a lot of the processing that's all related to that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now in terms of my research, which has been a really cool aspect of my major. But then on top of that, of course, the coursework has been super interesting, challenging, but interesting, and having the opportunity to make a ton of connections. I'm also in the Honors College at MSU, and so
Nice.
being able to be in those smaller class sizes, connect with honors students, that has been a really awesome way for me to build up my network. And then with regards to my summer in Japan, so that was through research experience for undergraduates program through Cornell University and the National Science Foundation. And this was seriously like a life-changing experience that I had. So I was living in Tsukuba, Japan, and then working at a national laboratory there. And my research was material science related and super duper interesting, but then also just being completely immersed in another culture, working with people from all across the world. Absolutely amazing experience.
No, that's awesome. Did you have a favorite piece of that? Did you like more the culture or did you like the work better?
Ooh, that's a great question. I gotta say, you really can't beat getting to travel around Japan every weekend. I think just all the diverse cultural experiences I had probably was the most exciting to me because it was so new and so different. Science is relatively universal, but the nuance of culture is something I did not appreciate until I was abroad for a little while.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what made you kind of want to go into this field of electrical engineering?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So, all throughout my life, I'd been interested in science, even from when I was a little kid. And, when I was in middle school, right, I was involved with Code Girls. I was also involved in the science fair. And so I did kind of tech-related projects. But I wasn't ever super like set on, oh, I want to be an electrical engineer, like from the time I was little. And it wasn't really until I got into high school and started doing some of the engineering electives that Glacier High School offered. And I did it was like a circuits design class or something like that. Anyway, I did that class and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And I've always had a passion for math and science. I'll give this a try when I get to college. And so it was sort of like the accumulation of all the stuff I'd done when I was younger, plus then having that class where I got to apply some of that knowledge. And I was like, oh, this seems pretty interesting. And so then that's kind of what motivated me actually to go into electrical engineering. But in terms of everything else that I've done since then, it has been a lot of brand new opportunities that I didn't even know existed. So also just genuine curiosity about all the cool applications of engineering and science. That's also a big motivation for me to keep exploring the nuances of my major now.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So what would you say was most surprising when you were first kind of putting your feet in the water here?
Um, Most surprising in college, I'd say number one, probably how interdisciplinary everything is. So I feel like when everybody talks to you about like, oh, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like you're told to like pick one thing. But the reality is that the career you do and even the classes you take and the projects you work on when you're in college, they rely on knowledge from a bunch of different disciplines. So as an electrical
Mhm.
engineer, I use stuff from physics, math, chemistry, material science, all of these different things I have to pull together to be able to solve the kind of problems that I work on. And I think it makes me a better engineer, it makes me a better scientist, and just better problem solver in general. And so appreciating the value of how interdisciplinary work is, that's would be my number one thing that surprised me. Because I was also always of the mindset, oh, I have to pick my one thing. There's no
Right.
one thing. Um, and then I guess my second thing would be, so when I was younger, and involved in like all of these STEM programs, with the exception of co-girls, of course, I was usually the only girl.
Yeah.
And when I got to college, I was like, okay, here we go again. Like, I'm going to be by myself in a lot of these classes. But the connections with my peers that I made, both the other girls in my major that I found to be super supportive and awesome and uplifting, and then also all of the guys that I have classes with every day, those connections have been really, really positive and really valuable. So,
Oh, that's
the
wonderful.
importance of all the people that I've met along the way, I'd say that was the second most surprising thing for me.
Yeah. No, that is surprising, but that's great. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's interested in electrical engineering?
Um, yeah, I had to think a lot about this question because obviously there's a lot of, little tiny things I could say, like
Yeah.
avoid this professor or this class is going to be really hard. But at the end of the day, the most important thing in terms of anything you do, but especially something that's really challenging like engineering, is to remember your why.
Hmm.
And I say this because there'll be times when you're doing an assignment or you have some massive project due or it's finals week and you're just like trying to cram through everything and it feels like, what's the point? Why am I doing this? But if you have something that motivates you, like, oh, there are these problems that I want to work on, or I want to do cool stuff with this specific company. Like, if you have that big picture motivation in mind and you keep that in your mind, even through all the rough times and all the crappy classes and everything that you don't want to do, that's what can motivate you to get through, to get your degree, and then, moving on to your career and actually start to, or actually feel motivated to get through everything, and then to not just like give up when things get hard, which I think is something you see happen pretty frequently sometimes with people, is if you don't have a why that's driving you through
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, you won't get there.
Hmm. So what were some of the resources that you had to help you along that way when you were when classes were challenging or when things were hard?
I would say number one, my peers. We all sort of realize that this stuff's really hard, and if you try to do it by yourself, you're not going to succeed. So we all are really well connected. We study together, work on projects together, and then additionally, through all the work that I do at MSU, especially in my job now, I work with a bunch of different undergraduates, especially, and a number of them are electrical engineers, older than me in
Hmm.
college, and so also relying on, I guess, mentors and older students for
Yeah.
support. They've been through it, and somebody who's been through it can give you some really, really good advice about how to deal with just about any situation. So, yeah, relying on those connections I've made, that would be my number one thing. And then the second would be just exploring stuff that the university offers. Like, um, in a lot of situations in life, people do want to set you up to succeed. You just have to go digging around to find the resources that you need to get there. And so when you do that, there's a lot of help out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So you talked a little bit about mentors. What was one piece of advice that a mentor gave you that's really stuck with you?
I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got from my boss that I work for right now is he has this thing called what he calls most respectful interpretation. But it's this idea that whenever you approach a situation and it's something that like you're really uncomfortable with, or there's another person who's upsetting you, like you just feel some sort of discord in a situation due to another person, you approach it with sort of looking at the person with the most respectful way you can. Like, oh,
Hmm.
they're not having a good day, or something in their personal life is really messing with them, and trying not to take things super personally and really put yourself in another person's shoes. And even in engineering, because it's so like relies so much on teamwork and working with other people. In my lab right now, we work with a lot of different customers at our university and in industry. Like, you're working with a bunch of different personalities all the time. So always having a really, really respectful interpretation of where people come from when these kind of problems come up in a technical situation, in a personal situation, is has been really, really valuable for me to keep in mind all throughout college and in all of the different work environments that I've been in.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good shift your perspective, see what they're going through.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what do you think is a very important personality trait or strength someone would need to have to be successful in your current career path?
Um, Aside from technical skills, of course, which you can
Yeah.
learn in school, I would say grit is the number one thing. Because what I've seen in college is there are a lot of really, really smart people here, But if you don't put in the work and you don't put yourself out there and take advantage of opportunities, there's really no way that you'll be noticed by an employer, you'll be noticed by people at your university, or it'll be a lot harder for you to actually get out there into the world and take advantage of all the different opportunities
Yeah.
that are out there, no matter of your ability. And I feel like a better predictor of that is grit, like the idea that you're working really hard, like you're very tenacious, you're
Hmm.
not quitting even through the crappy stuff. And this isn't, of course, just coursework. This is the hard stuff like going through interviews and applying for jobs and graduate programs and just doing all of the legwork to get yourself into positions. It's not just showing up and doing your homework, it's so much more than that at this point in life. And so, people who are really gritty and can just get through the hard stuff, they have a way better chance of making it further than somebody who's just smart but not actually willing to put in the work.
Right. Not putting themselves out there.
Yes.
So you're here at MSU in your third year. Where do you see yourself going in the future? What do the next few years look like for you?
So in the next few years, I'm going to be, of course, like working to finish up all my coursework in electrical engineering and material science. But right now, a lot of my big focus is on the laboratory I work at. So
Hmm.
the microfab or the Montana Microfabrication Facility, it's what we call the MMF, has a ton of different projects. We're always looking to expand these facilities and get more equipment, get more customers, get more people involved with the lab. So in this lab right now, I do a lot of process engineering. So that means I'm working on, what do we do to our silicon wafers to get the like desired results, sort of like
Yeah.
optimizing all the steps that we use. And so I have a lot of different projects related to process engineering for this lab, and that's going to be my big focus. Is just trying to dive into my work there and really try and leave some stuff when I graduate that's going to be beneficial to the lab and help people going forward be able to do anything or any different type of process better that I've been working on. So that's my number one focus. And then after that is probably just trying to, you know, discover sort of where my niche is going to be in the semiconductor industry. Um, I have definitely considered going to grad school, but it's one of
Hmm.
those cases where getting your master's degree or getting your PhD, it helps you specialize, but you want to know what you want to specialize in. This sort of goes back to the remembering your why conversation from earlier. If you
Yeah.
don't have a why for when you go to graduate school, it makes it really, really hard to get through that degree program. That's sort of what I've learned from all of the different people I've interacted with. So,
Hmm.
yeah, my goal right now is to sort of figure out, okay, I have a really good like general overview. That's sort of what your undergraduate gives you. And then, all right, I have this overview. Now where do I want to specialize? And so exploring all the different avenues of electrical engineering, generally with a focus, of course, in the semiconductor industry.
Hmm.
And then deciding, okay, when I'm in the workforce, do I want to actually specialize more?
Yeah. Yeah. So what does a day in your life kind of look like now, both working in the lab and being a student?
Yeah. So it's sometimes a pretty chaotic mixture of classes and lab work. But like today, I was, in the office working for a little while. I went to class and I'm doing this interview. And then after this, I have more lectures and then a few meetings for work. A couple hours where I'll be in the lab doing some inventorying and like kind of administrative stuff. Another class, and then I'll spend the rest of the evening doing a bunch of outreach stuff. And so it usually looks like me plugging in sort of blocks of time in between a lot of my classes
Yeah.
to work on projects, anything from like lab upkeep, so that's where I like do inventory or purchasing,
Mhm.
stocking, things like that, to actually going in and doing like a lithography process, for example. I'm
Oh.
also a teaching assistant for a few of the classes that utilize this laboratory, so I spend a lot of my
Oh,
time
nice.
every week preparing for those labs, and then also obviously having the students in the clean room, working with them through whatever process we're doing for the week. Um, and yeah, making sure that whole thing runs smoothly. So yeah, sort of just a trade off between I have a block of time here class, a block of time here lab work, back and
Yeah.
forth for most days. That's usually how it goes.
Nice. It sounds like you've got your hands full.
A little
Um,
bit.
so kind of as we shift here, can you talk about your experience with Code Girls?
Yeah. So this is a trip down memory lane because I think I started when I was 11 or 12, and I remember when I first came. Um, I was pretty nervous. I didn't know anything about computer science. My dad was like, "Here, you should come join this program." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. I don't know anything about coding." And so I was really apprehensive. But what I remember being excited about when I very first got there was seeing a whole room full of girls who were just as excited about math and science like me. And I hadn't really ever had that experience before. And so that's one of the first memories I have is just like completely being surrounded in an environment of really, really supportive women. And the further I got along in the program, I got really excited. Like every day it was like, or every time that we would meet, it was like, oh, I get to go solve a cool problem with all my friends.
Mhm.
And I really, really value the connections that I made. But as well as like being able to use those connections to work on some really, really interesting problems. Yeah. Um, I think my biggest takeaway was that, or I guess sort of the power of science to really address any kind of problem. Like the apps we
Mhm.
made address stuff from like um, measuring when your car went over like a pothole to making a little game so that you could like donate to food banks and then get points in this little game.
Oh, right,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so being able to use computer science to just work on this huge array of problems, it sort of opened the doors to me. It's like, okay, with math and science, you can literally work on any kind of problem you want. You can have
Mhm.
any kind of impact that you want. Um, and that was a pretty cool realization to have, especially at that young of age.
Right.
And then also knowing that, even if it feels like you're kind of by yourself in school, if you find the communities where there's a lot of women around you, they can be
Mhm.
super supportive and you have a really positive experience when you're in those communities. And so the importance of
Yeah.
seeking those out, I'd say was my second big takeaway.
No, that's wonderful. I'm glad you were able to get that from Code Girls, and we hope to give that to
Yes.
more girls too. Do you have any kind of last thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, actually, I do have one, which I would want to give, I'd say, to girls who are going to STEM, would be you don't feel like you have to, I guess, like be like all the guys around you, because I feel like when I was younger, like I saw these guys who were like super involved in robotics and like all they did was build
Mhm.
computers and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, that's what an engineer looks like. But now that I'm in college, that's what I do in my day to day is engineering and science. But your hobbies and the rest of your life doesn't have to reflect that stereotype.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you. That's really insightful too. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week on Code Girls on Air.
I never saw them as challenges. I just saw them as walls. And if there's a wall in front of you, you have choices. You can take a lawn chair out and sit there and stare at it, hope something changes. You can climb over it, you can go around it, or you can dig under it. And I always got my shovel out. And so I think some of the challenges was up against the brick walls of just being accepted as a woman in a very, very strong male field.